Primary versus Secondary Sources by Morgan Unger. A primary source is something that is original. Sources, such as a document, letter, or physical object, represents a primary source. Finding primary sources gives students a chance to research and find evidence. An example of a primary source is an artifact, such as a dinosaur bone. Another example of a primary source is a signature, such as a handwritten note from George Washington. Strengths of primary sources are providing students with real-life visuals and giving students insight into what they are learning about. Primary sources are sometimes hard to obtain. For instance, information that dates back 100 years ago might be gone. Another weakness of a primary source is damage. For instance, if a handwritten note has water damage, it might be hard to read. A secondary source is something that explains other information. Unlike a primary source, which is original information, a secondary source assists in understanding that information without being able to see it. Secondary sources reveal data and facts that are relevant and updated. An example of a secondary source is a book, such as a biography on Neil Armstrong and how he was the first person to step on the moon. Another example of a secondary source is an educational video, such as one that focuses on how Thanksgiving became an official holiday. A strength of secondary sources is that they are easy to find online or in a library. Another strength of secondary sources is that the number of resources available is abundant. A weakness of secondary sources is that they might not be 100% accurate. Another weakness of secondary sources is that the information might be someone else's interpretation. Students in elementary school need to explore primary and secondary sources. Both sources can be incorporated into a classroom while learning about Anne Frank and the Holocaust. A primary source can be Anne Frank's diary. A secondary source can be a book, such as a biography about Anne Frank. Here are sources that assisted me with this assignment.